Malo, talo falava, kia orana, and welcome to the Pacific Way. In 2010, the Pacific community designed and advocated the Pacific Islands Domestic Ship Safety or PIDSS program in an effort to improve maritime safety in member countries. In this story, we look at how the government of Vanuatu is working with SPC to improve safety procedures and policies amongst domestic shipping companies and their fleet in Port Vila.
For centuries, Pacific people have traveled across the vast oceans using traditional canoes and other means of transportation. Today, hundreds of thousands of people are dependent on sea and shipping services for business, inter-island travel, or just a daily commute to get to work or school. As in Port Vila, Vanuatu, 29-year-old Frankie Caltex provides essential sea transportation, which is also his only source of income.
Yeah, you need to go to Maritime for 3 months. After that, you come back, they register you on the list. Once they register your boat, then you can start doing the water taxi.
While about 90% of goods and people are transported using domestic shipping, it is considered the lifeline and main driver for economic development in the region.
Domestic shipping is the lifeline, Without the support of domestic ships, development does not go to and fro, vice versa. So it is the lifeline, and it will remain the lifeline. It is the link between any of these rural areas and the two main towns. You have produce that needs to be exported. It is these small domestic ships that will bring it to the main towns for export.
Shipping lanes and ports of entry also provide a wider economic impact in the Pacific Islands. This is evident as a cruise liner pulled into the harbour in Port Vila. Like Frankie, hundreds of others are dependent on these cruise ships to make a living. However, for water taxi operators like Frankie, safety is paramount if they are to also continue to provide services.
As for me as a driver, once the passengers are on board, the first idea that pops up on my mind is like, I need to keep everyone safe, see where I'm going, make sure everything is okay, boat is balanced, make sure everyone is sitting properly, and then comfortable, then we can drive safely home. I keep my eyes open, look at the way it's shallows, watch all the lights, watch all the big boats coming in, straight to the destination.
But the bigger the boat, the bigger the responsibility. Following two major maritime disasters in Kiribati and Tonga in 2009, Pacific Island leaders highlighted the need to accelerate the implementation of safety protocols on domestic shipping vessels throughout the region. In 2010, the Pacific Community, or SPC, designed and advocated the Pacific Islands Domestic Ship Safety, or the PIDSS program. The main goal of PIDSS is to strengthen maritime safety on domestic vessels through adoption and implementation of a safety management system by the domestic shipping companies and their fleets. The main components of this safety program include to review the status of domestic ships in the region, provide safety trainings and templates for safe operational plans or SOPs to support a safety management system, and to conduct maritime safety audits to test the effectiveness of implementation of the SOPs.
In the PIDSS program, we're trying to improve safety on domestic vessels through implementation of a safety management system. And so we came up with safe operational plans. These are more or less like safety manuals for the ships, where they would implement safety procedures or their procedures related to their operations, because it's all about the safe operation of the ships and pollution prevention.
SPC, in partnership with the KfW Development Bank, has been working closely with the Office of the Maritime Regulator and the Department of Ports and Harbour in Vanuatu to implement the requirements under the PIDSS.
Safer seas, cleaner ocean. These two words mean a lot. We can break it down, but safer seas, cleaner ocean is what the industry is aspiring to. And improvement in everything across the maritime sector. We all contribute to improving what we have now, and further improvement to inspections to ensure that our domestic ships are safer, there is no loss of lives, and safe shipping improves economic impact to the islands.
The initiative that the OMAR is bringing in, through SPC to the PIDSS program to bring in the improve maritime safety governance and then have that come down into the industry is absolutely supportive of it. I think we've heard calls from the clients, from passengers, people traveling to the islands, people shipping cargo to the islands, and then from the crews themselves. Everybody wants a safer work environment. So for the ship owners, having vessels not sink, safer operations keeps the damage down, and helps make shipping more profitable. So yeah, no, I think it's absolutely it's a very good initiative, and it's something that we need to embrace all the way from the OMAR, ship owners, the crews, the captains, and the crews to make shipping in Vanuatu safer.
Planned audits are conducted by the SPC team on selected vessels, which have implemented their SOPs as part of the process to ensure compliance of the safety operating procedures.
The audit is meant to test how effective the safety man, how they implemented the SOPs. Yes? Without that, we cannot tell whether they have the manual, but whether they are implementing it effectively or in the right way or not. So that's the next step. Once they are ready with their SOPs, they implemented it, then they can invite us to do the audits to test how effective their system is. And from the findings, we normally, because we use the SPC auditing standards, yes, the findings we normally issue the SINS, System Improvement Notice. So you see, it's not a non-conformity, yes, it's a System Improvement Notice. So it's really, the audit is there for continuous improvement of their system.
While PIDSS aims to decrease maritime incidents and make domestic sea travel safer for the entire sector, for someone like Frankie, it means that it will get him home to his family every night.
Welcome back. You're watching The Pacific Way. For 3 decades, the encroaching ocean slowly ate away at the coast on which the Awak Elementary School sat, threatening the education and safety of children there in the Federated States of Micronesia. The people mobilized, and with the help of the Pacific community, built a Gambian wall to stop the biggest threat facing the municipality. This is their story.
There is a cluster of islands at the very north of the Pacific called the Federated States of Micronesia, better known as the FSM. This island nation is home to just over 100,000 people. Compared to the other countries of the world, the FSM is made up of relatively small islands in a gigantic ocean.
Many of our islands are low-lying islands. We have 607 islands. About 20 or what are high islands, and the rest are just low islands like the Marshalls. And so many of the communities living on those islands are very vulnerable, whether it be sea level rise, drought, because they have very limited water resources. So that is the challenge that the country face as a nation, as a country.
Impact of climate change, if you look at the projections, in the next 50 years, there will be less typhoon, but it will be more intense. And that is the fear.
Sea level rise due to climate change affects many parts of this country differently.
Before, when the seas are really high or rough, then of course wash the beaches off and then they're built again. But that's not happening anymore. What we're seeing is that the actual island is eroding, and the trees that used to be 50 feet away from the coastline are no longer there. And actually, many of the islands now, especially the ones with lagoons, are actually losing houses that used to be, way inland, like let's say 50 feet, 100 feet inland. We have pictures of islands with houses that are already in the water. Just took away people's homes.
For the school and surrounding community of Awak, sea level rise has been taking away portions of their school compound bit by bit for the past 3 decades.
From the time I was in the school back in 1980s, 90s, the shore was like 20 feet away from the Capian Wall. And over the years, it has been eroded. There's a lot of erosion from that side.
And so me set koto kawela puel kasesang ni truko toto kolo pupsang o puel tukutukla sap.
Awak Elementary School caters for students from 14 different communities. The Pacific community, through its Building Safety and Resilience in the Pacific program, BSRP, used funding from the European Union to build a gabion wall around the eroding portion of the Awak school grounds.
Before it was built, rocks fall in the water, and it wasn't that safe for us students to walk over there. It was scary because we were afraid if we walk on the rocks, it might fall in the water and we fall in the water. It's much more safer if we want to play games, and if our balls or something that we play with go over there, we can run and get it instead of being scared to go there.
It is good for our school. Now, stop the eroding of the soil, and we don't have to worry about the land getting smaller and smaller every year. 50 years from now, it will look the same. Instead of, walking there and there's no soil after the 50 years because there's no good wall there that will protect the erosion of the land.
So that came out of that vulnerability and capacity assessment, where the impact of seawater intrusion into the school compound was threatening a double-story building and also limiting the playing space for children. So that became a priority for them. And that has been completed, so it has achieved both in terms of stopping the intrusion of salt water into the playing ground and also not threatening the classroom building.
The FSM shows a very progressive approach in adapting to climate change. Not only are they consulting stakeholders before making development decisions, but they are also future-proofing the projects by analyzing how it would benefit or safeguard them over the long-term course of climate change and during sudden natural catastrophes.
So for FSM, when they integrate, they sort of look at that projections. So they look at the impact of climate change and how it will affect the livelihoods out there in the islands. So the development of the Joint National Action Plan was looking at both the day-to-day living and also the future vulnerabilities, how that vulnerabilities can be reduced when these projections are scientifically based. So combining the sciences and then working with the communities to come up with adaptations or mitigation strategies that will at least help in reducing those vulnerabilities.
In terms of packaging the project, we involve a lot of stakeholders in the communities themselves to come in and help us, identify what are the challenges, and then identify the solutions, what they think are appropriate solutions to the challenges that they face. And so in doing that from the beginning, they took ownership of it, and then it's not like us coming to them and telling them this is what you need for your community. They identified their challenges, identified the way they need to address it, and then when we worked with them, it's essentially just assisting them with the resources to be able to do what they needed. And so in the communities help to make sure that the projects are implemented in their own communities. So it really helped with the implementation because the communities feel a part of it. They want to do it because it's for their own benefit, it's for them.
And that's all we have time for in this episode. For more videos and news, please visit the Pacific Community YouTube channel or the Pacific Way Facebook page. But first, every Pacific island has their own weaving and handcraft arts, handed down from generation to generation. An item which is commonly used across the Pacific are fans. Today, we'll look at the art of fan weaving in Nauru. We hope you enjoy this. Until next time, tofa soifua, mahalo, and goodbye.
I'm making hand fans. These hand fans are traditionally Nauruan cultures that we usually...
Weaving is a masterful skill that requires traditional knowledge, creativity, and lots of patience. Elmina Kwadina from the tiny island nation of Nauru has all these traits. This is the beginning of her latest creation, a project that will take 4 days to complete.
We usually use the local hibiscus fibers, but since there are more modern imports coming in, like rapiers and other things like this, we started using this one because they're much more simple to use. Whereas the rapier, it takes us a long time by having to soak them in the pond, which takes you about 2 months. Soak them in the pond, then take it out and get them all cleaned out in the sea. Then have them all dried, taking all the pages of the leaves out. Since we found that there are dyes, we dye these using modern technologies, which are dyes. But whereas in Nauru, sometimes, especially I use the local dyes from the roots of the plants or either the leaves or the barks of the trees. The difference is using the local resources of dyes. It's much more lighter than the other dyes that have been imported to the island.
It's been 36 years since Almina participated at the Festival of Pacific Arts. At 16, she attended the second festival in New Zealand as a traditional dancer. She comes to Honiara as a craft specialist.
Actually, I've been making fans for the last, say, 10 years. I used to learn from my mother how to make these things, though I was a bit lazy at those times. But since trying to revive all these cultures, we have to get our hands together and start teaching all the local children about the traditional culture.
The hut is filled with many artifacts, representative of the 12 tribes of Nauru. Among them hang the traditional hand fans of various colors and design.
With the hand fans, it's different with the mats. The mats, we can design those ones following our tribal designs, which there are the 12 tribes. 12 tribal mats, so each of those mats can be designed, whereas the hand fans, we don't have much design about. But it comes up however we design the hand fans. The designs depends on what you want to design, but for this design here that I've got here, I was trying to design the flag of the Solomon Islands, but instead I got the PNG color scene. So that was by mistake, but anyway, I hope to complete it. And then I hope to complete another one before I leave this place. I hope everybody is enjoying themselves. And I hope they enjoy what's going on in the Nauruan huts, especially with my hand fan making.